Unexpected Elements is all about finding the surprising science angles to everyday news.
Mind absolutely blown.
Amazing to me.
That's Unexpected Elements from the BBC World Service. Find it wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Welcome to The Inquiry. I'm Charmaine Cozier. Each week, one question, 4 expert witnesses, and an answer. July 2023. Congress, Washington, D.C., USA. A group of lawmakers, Republican and Democrat, are watching 3 short, grainy black and white videos taken from fighter jet cameras. In one, an oval object glows and twists as it flies through the sky. The shocked reactions of the Navy pilots during that training flight are also recorded.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Well, if there's like it's rotating.
The other 2 videos, shot at different times, show mysterious objects doing similar things. The footage was officially released by the Pentagon in 2020, but was leaked years before that. Known as the Tic Tac videos, they have millions of views on YouTube. Now it's part of this House Oversight Committee public hearing, which began with a congressional caveat.
We're not bringing little green men or flying saucers into the hearing. Sorry to disappoint about half y'all. We're just going to get to the facts.
So this week we're asking, are we alone in the universe?
Part 1. Eyes on the Skies.
I think that you can say that without question, people have been seeing things in the sky that struck them as strange or odd for centuries.
Gregor Gigian is Professor of History and Bioethics at Penn State University in the US. He's also writing a book about the global history of those strange sightings, including when reports of them really took off.
It's fair to say that the UFO phenomenon began in the summer of 1947. This is when a private pilot by the name of Kenneth Arnold on the west coast of the United States was flying his plane around Mount Rainier and saw these rather strange, at least to him, looking objects flying in a formation at a very high speed. And what happened in very quick succession was the story got grabbed up by some newspapers, and a very enterprising journalist dubbed them flying saucers, and that name stuck. And then later on, over the years, the term UFO, or unidentified flying object, is going to get coined.
The term UFO expanded.
It all gets wrapped up around the supposition on the part of some that these might well be from outer space, that these might be extraterrestrial in origin. And that's what kind of makes this moment distinctive historically.
Reports of unidentified objects intensified.
There was a huge wave of sightings, for instance, in 1950 that occurred throughout much of Europe, Spain, Italy, and then spread to Latin America. A big wave of sightings in the United States during the summer of 1952, probably the most famous being over Washington, D.C. There was a wave of sightings in France in 1954 that were really distinctive because you saw many of reports of people actually seeing the occupants of these UFOs. And one can go on and talk about a number of others throughout the 70s, 1980s, 1990s.
It's not clear why the waves of sightings happen when they do. Some point to popular culture as a cause, but
we don't just simply see, for instance, a big movie come out and then there's lots of sightings. It doesn't seem to be as simple as that. What I think it is fairer to say is that we know that the Cold War explicitly and very directly impacted and affected how the UFO phenomenon played out and why it takes shape in the way that it does.
The years following the end of the Second World War in 1945 saw the communist ideology of the former Soviet Union go head-to-head with the capitalism of the US and its allies. Tensions led to the Cold War, which lasted for more than 40 years. It was a time of secrecy, spies, and the testing and deployment of nuclear weapons.
So then the question gets asked, why did the aliens decide now is the time to visit us? And there the argument or the speculation that is, well, they probably saw the explosions over Nagasaki and Hiroshima. They've been tracking the nuclear testing on the part of the superpowers, and that this has brought them here. They have come here because either they're curious about us, or they're scared of us, or they're concerned about us. So very early on, the Cold War gets bound up in this phenomenon.
And there's more. The 1950s also marked the start of countries competing to be the first to reach the moon and beyond.
The space age plays another very big role in how the UFO phenomenon plays out. It feeds a kind of a narrative that, of course, science fiction had set in motion already in the 19th century. The fact that we can achieve these things and that we can consider the prospect of colonizing Mars, right, or the like, now seems to be something within our grasp. And if we're capable of that, imagine what an even more advanced civilization could achieve. I don't know that we can say we necessarily are seeing an uptick in sightings, and there's some pretty good evidence to indicate that around 2010 and 2012 is when we see a decline in sightings. But what we see now is this kind of really focused and intensified media interest in the subject.
And our next expert witness is central to that latest wave of international media interest.
Part 2. A Whole New World.
My name is Leslie Kean, and I'm an investigative reporter, and I've been covering the UFO topic in the mainstream media for 23 years. And then in 2017, I was part of a front page story in the New York Times, which set us on a whole new course in the United States regarding this topic. There was a secret government program within the Department of Defense that had been studying the UFO phenomenon, or what they then call UAP, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, since about 2010.
UFOs are now called UAPs. The former name was problematic.
It has a lot of baggage because it's associated with Little Green Man and all the things that people have used over the years to ridicule this. The manifestation that this phenomenon takes are so broad, in that it is seen in space, it is seen in our atmosphere, and it is also seen underwater. So we just have to see it as a very, very broad and mysterious set of characteristics that need a broader acronym to describe them.
In 2017, frustrated with the lack of resources and support, the head of the US UAP task force quit and went public.
I was invited to a meeting with him and some of his colleagues and was given all the information necessary to bring the story to the New York Times. And everyone was on the record, and there were documents and there were videos. And we also did an interview with Senator Harry Reid, who was the person who initially set the program up and was able to establish funding for it. And it gave the government officials permission to take it seriously, and they started asking questions about it, and briefings were conducted. So that's how it kind of kicked off everything that followed.
In June this year, Leslie Kean had another story from a whistleblower called David Grush, a former Afghan war veteran and former high-level intelligence official. He spoke of a hidden, long-standing US government program that retrieves and reverse engineers materials made by non-humans, including crashed and intact craft and possibly the remains of the entities that piloted them.
And this was, of course, a very radical claim to make, but he was highly respected, had talked to up to 40 people at very high levels within the intelligence community, and some of them within the programs themselves, who informed him of this. And he brought all this data to Congress, spent 11 and a half hours speaking to some of the committee staffers.
That was the recent congressional hearing.
The information he provided was very specific, but it was classified. And people make the point, and justifiably so, that he did not himself have direct access to these crash retrievals. He hasn't seen them. He hasn't touched them. He provided locations, names of people involved, names of programs, dates of when things were discovered, how long the programs have been in existence, and that kind of data. So it's up to the Congress now to follow up and also to take the testimonies of other whistleblowers who have come forward to add to David Grush and see what they can find. But it was a very radical moment when we released this story because nobody at this level of credibility has ever come forward before with such a claim as this.
The US Defense Department has said that investigators have not found any verifiable information to substantiate claims that any programs regarding the possession or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently. David Grush wasn't the only one to speak under oath. 2 other military veterans were there, but not to whistleblow. Instead, they gave eyewitness accounts of their separate UAP encounters as pilots, which they had publicly discussed before. One involved the Tic Tac videos we heard at the start of the programme.
My gosh. They're all going against the wind.
The US congressional hearings focus was whether the government knows more about UAPs than it's telling the public.
I spent 17 years saying we need to take this seriously. This is an aviation safety hazard. It may even be a national security issue. We need scientific investigation. We need government investigation. And basically, I was making the statement that UFOs are real. And it feels like a whole new world from the one that I was involved in prior to 2017. And also, we have to remember that the members of Congress who are involved with this have received numerous classified briefings on this topic. So we have to remember that they know a lot more than we do. And that's why they're taking it so seriously. The citizens of the world have a right to know that we are not alone if indeed we have proof of that fact.
Unexpected Elements is the podcast exploring the science behind the headlines.
That's an interesting concept.
It's just bubbling with excitement.
Each week, we take a news story you've probably heard of and use the science surrounding it as a springboard to dive into other stories that may not be on your radar.
We're here in my bee lab.
In front of a box of bees.
There were no bad side effects at all.
Unexpected Elements from the BBC World Service. Find it wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Part 3. The truth is out there.
The only way to know something extraordinary is through science, the rigorous and quite brutal process, actually, of science that allows you to separate belief and opinion from public facts, from public knowledge. That's what science is about. I am Adam Frank. I'm professor of astrophysics at the University of Rochester, and I am the author of the upcoming book, The Little Book of Aliens. I'm an astronomer, so I study the things that in the sky. And in particular, for the last 10 or 15 years, I've been working in the field of astrobiology, which is the study of life in the universe.
Scientists are curious about many things, but have steered away from UAPs in the past.
There's nothing a scientist can do. There's just a lot of fuzzy blob pictures, as I like to call them, and a lot of personal stories and personal anecdotes. Science can't do much with personal anecdotes. As every cop and psychologist will tell you, memory is the worst form of evidence. There has never been a science associated with UFOs and UAPs because there isn't the kind of data that scientists need to do science with.
But times are changing. Adam Frank is also the principal investigator on the first grant from the US space agency NASA to study technosignatures, or the search for evidence of advanced technology on planets outside our solar system.
So if you want to find people from Nebraska, would you look in a small village in the Himalayas for Nebraskans? No, you would actually look in Nebraska, because that's where Nebraskans live. So it's the same thing with aliens. You know, the galaxy has 400 billion stars in it. That's a lot of stars with a lot of planets. You know, Earth is nothing special. Earth is this little tiny village in the Himalayas. So, the place you want to look for aliens is on their planets.
Adam Frank hopes the pilot eyewitness testimonies to the US House Oversight Committee will lead somewhere.
An open, transparent investigation of these will be useful. Because I don't think the pilots are lying. I think the pilots are being honest and have a lot of integrity about what they say they're seeing. They're not saying they're aliens. They're saying they behaved in ways that no jet could behave. But, again, personal testimony, you can't do any science with that. So what may happen now is we're going to begin to get some scientific study of this, and we'll try and get a better handle on it. So that was something that was useful from the hearings.
When it comes to the whistleblower testimony about the non-human recoveries, however, scientific doubts dominate.
As I like to say, if it sounds like an episode of The X-Files, which literally this is like torn out of an episode of The X-Files, it probably is. And the idea that no one ever snuck out a picture or a piece of alien debris for 70 years, that kind of stretches credibility. But then also there's other parts of this. Interstellar space is the most hostile environment you could possibly imagine. The distances between stars are so vast they will melt your mind. And somehow we're being asked to believe that a civilization that can create advanced technologies that can cross these distances, that can survive the hostile environments, gets to Earth and then crashes, right? So that also stretches the imagination.
The Pentagon Tic Tac videos have also been scrutinised by a panel put together by NASA to examine UAP sightings.
But from a scientific point of view, scientists don't have access to the raw footage. And then at the NASA panel, one of the scientists showed a simple analysis of the video that shows the object traveling seemingly at high speed over the ocean. And what the NASA scientists showed was that with a simple analysis, you could show that was moving at 40 miles an hour. So certainly nothing very extraterrestrial about that.
Without high levels of evidence to back up sightings and claims, scientists will treat them as speculative stories. Technology continues to evolve.
We have powerful new telescopes like the James Webb, and these telescopes have the capacity to see into the atmospheres of distant alien worlds, planets that are 10, 20 light years away. And by looking into the atmosphere, we can kind of sniff the atmosphere for things like oxygen. And if there is oxygen in the atmosphere, that is what we call a biosignature. It's a signature that world has a rich biosphere, forests and microbes, etc. So that's one way we're going to do it. And astrobiology is undergoing a revolution such that we may very well be the last generation that doesn't know whether or not we're alone in the universe.
And if we're not alone in the universe, what then?
Part 4, Extraterrestrial Ethics.
Dr. Chelsea Haramia is a member of the UK SETI Research Network Post Detection Hub.
So the Post Detection Hub is a cohort of interdisciplinary and international researchers, and we have gathered together to think about how best to prepare humanity for the aftermath of a successful detection of extraterrestrial technology.
She's also an associate professor of philosophy at Spring Hill College in Alabama in the US, and currently a senior research fellow at the University of Bonn in Germany. SETI is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
I don't think we're going to have just a list of here's exactly how to ethically respond to a successful detection, right? Because the detailed sort of responses are going to depend on facts on the ground of which we are unaware currently.
But that doesn't mean the Post Detection Hub is short of ideas to exchange.
We have to consider justice and oppression and the ways in which this kind of event will activate and motivate people in positions of power. And we know that people in positions of power have historically wielded that power in ways that oppress and unjustly mistreat others. So if you have aliens, well, we already use the word alien here. on Earth to refer to other humans, and often it's used to other them, to dehumanize them, and to justify their mistreatment and oppression.
And given that some governments are considerably more oppressive than others,
what's going to happen is that some people are probably going to make morally appropriate decisions, others are probably going to make morally abhorrent or at least morally suspect decisions, and so it's going to be an ongoing kind of ethical puzzle to figure out.
One appropriate action would be to pause and think carefully before making contact following a successful detection. But some nations might not do that.
Oh yeah, those concerns have certainly been voiced. There are those that worry that certain leaders, certain governments will see this as an opportunity for a power grab, right? As an opportunity for maybe a monopoly on communication with an extraterrestrial, others, or on knowledge about the details of this extraterrestrial evidence. And so one thing that can help to mitigate those concerns is to think about how the science is actually practiced.
And that's because science is typically collaborative, with evidence and data shared between countries. So that's a major monopoly obstacle. There's also specialist expertise, equipment and niche technologies involved.
And so there are all sorts of facilities across the globe that would be in a good position to start gathering evidence. And so it would be very difficult, I think, just logistically, for a terrestrial government to get a monopoly on that kind of information or potential communication. Because the evidence and the data might be scientifically complicated, it might be rather nuanced, and we need folks who are good or trained in communicating high-level science to the public.
Dr. Chelsea Haramia says we'll need more than data to understand the unknown.
And in addition to scientific communicators, I would contend, I'm a philosopher, right? And so that's something that I think could be helpful in preparing humanity for something like a post-detection. Even if we have concrete evidence, there still will be a lot of uncertainty. And if we have public philosophers coming in and weighing in on the many important ethical questions that are going to come up in the event of a successful detection, I think that would be really helpful as well in helping just the general public to think through what will be a very profound moment in human history.
So are we alone in the universe? It depends who you ask. First-hand accounts of sightings and whistleblower claims from intelligence insiders, past and present, suggest we have company. A relentlessly high bar for hard data leaves scientists needing way more proof to get behind that. Wherever you stand on this, our first expert witness, Professor Greg Egigian from Penn State University, says one thing is certain.
UFOs are social facts. That is to say, aliens, flying saucers, spacecraft from other worlds are absolutely part of our world because we have made them part of our world. On that basis, I think it's something that we need to think about, we need to study.
This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, Charmaine Cozier, and produced by Louise Clark. The researchers were Matt Tolson and Bisi Adebayo, editor Tom Bigwood, and technical producer Kelly Young.